All right, guys. I don't expect too many people in attendance because this was last minute, but this is going to be the MX-69 build stream. So using the Flex PCB version 2.1. So this is what the flex board looks like. Some people might get them with a boost converter soldered on. Some people might not. It just depends on if I have any pre-soldered. If you don't get it with the boost soldered on, you'll just get a boost and some pins, and you'll have to do this little bit of soldering yourself. I solder it coil on the blank side, and then it's got VIN, VO, ground, and you just match those pins up so you don't have the boost converter in there backwards. You can see it's got pins for your camera and pins for your display. So only 3 for the display, 4 for the camera. These 2.1 boards, this 5 volt right here does not work. So I'll show you how to get around that. Basically the trace that was on the outer edge got cut during manufacturing of the board, and so this pin has no continuity to anything. All right, so step 1 is obviously going to be soldering the boost converter on if you don't already have it. Step 2 is going to be disassembling your V760. I actually order the screens and cameras in bulk without being in V760, and they come with this cable. So when you're looking at this cable, all my cables are pretty much the same color, but you can't rely on the color because it varies by fucking unit to unit. But you're going to look at it and you're going to count 4 wires. So you got purple, gray, brown, and orange, and you're going to cut those 4 off. Pin 5 is going to be your you look at it like this. Pin 5 is pin 5 is video. Pin 6 is ground. Pin 7 is your 5 volt input, 3 to 5 volt. I've been running them on 5 volt and having no issues with them because this is a 5 volt boost converter. So it's 3.3 volts in at these pads and 5 volt boost converter inside the tube. It just makes them work with standard analog tubes or analog housings. This is a completed one already. To kind of give you an overview of what it's going to look like. You got your 90-3 screwed in there. You got your screen on this side, and you got your flex board on the top, and that makes your 2 contacts. All right, so we're also going to grab our Night Eagle. So here's a brand new Night Eagle in the box. Pull the camera out, and I'll just set it aside. And you need a cable. And if you buy the Night Eagle, it comes with a OSD board. But if you buy any other version, it might not come with that board. So you can just take your box and shit and throw that away. Alright, so you got your Night Eagle, the harness, the board, your harness for your V760, your V760 display and board, and your flex board with the boost converter soldered on. So what I always do first is you take this cable and you put it up to here, and you're going to want to go probably maybe a ½ inch past, and you're just going to cut all this extra off. Just like that. And then your green wire, I always just fold this one down and out of the way. And you're working with your white and blue because these boards have that bad 5 volt pin. Then I like to take a lighter because if you strip them, there's a chance you pull them out of the connector. But take a lighter, burn a little bit. You don't need to strip them too far. You actually kind of want only a little bit stripped and you solder them through the board so you don't accidentally make any shorts inside your tube. So now I'm going to twist these up, not together, just twist them on themselves so they're kind of a solid wire. Alright, I usually throw them into the helping hands. And I'm just gonna put a little bit of solder just to make them more of a solid wire. Alright. And I didn't touch the green one yet, and you'll see why. But then I take these two, and white for me, which is pin 5, is going to be my video signal. So I'm going to pass them through. Sometimes they get a little like flare on the end, and you just got to snip the end so that they'll fit through the pockets and the holes. And you really got to be gentle with these flex boards. Once you have the wire soldered in there, you can't be tugging on them or anything, or else you risk ripping the traces out. So I pass both through and I fold it down. The white one didn't go in. Pass both through and kind of want them even. So fold it down like this, and I'll just pinch it, and I'll just put solder on the back sides of these. And that keeps them in there. And you really don't want to try and snip these once they're in the board, because you can like accidentally pull on it. But I'm just gonna clip a little bit off. That way we have not a bunch of spikies pointing through. And then I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna fold them around in the middle. I'm not gonna fold on that solder joint because, like I said, it's fragile and you can rip them out. I'll fold it in the middle just to give me some space. And I'm gonna take my run cam harness, and I literally just did this to a different harness, so don't do it. But the OSD cable, separate that one out so you don't actually snip it, but you're gonna snip it right at the same length as the OSD, so you don't have too much in there, but you got a decent amount. And then I separate these into pairs. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull your positive and ground out. You're going to pull your blue and yellow out. And then I'm going to strip these with my teeth and then put a little solder on them and stick them in the board. I'm not going to put solder on the positive one though. I'm just going to put solder on the yellow, blue, and black ones. So I'm just twisting them up a little bit so they're nice and tight with the wire. Bring out the helping hands again. I'll move this display. Like I said, I'm not going to do anything with the red one yet. Just these little yellow, blue, and black ones. This just prevents the wires from fraying and giving you a short when you pass them through. And usually what I do is at the base of the wire, I touch and I put the solder, and then I stroke upwards with it, and that usually takes care of any like balls or bumps to give it a thin wire as possible. And then I'm gonna take this green one, and I'm gonna just strip a little tiny bit off and we're gonna twist that up with our positive. So the cam and the display are catching the same voltage. And I've built a few MX-69s doing this exactly, and I haven't had any issues with them, so I think this will be alright. So I tested these boost converters, and unless you exceed 5-volt input, the boost converter never outputs anything more than 5 volts based on my multimeter reading. Alright, so I start with the blue and the yellow ones, and they're marked. So the board is actually marked vid, ground, or vid, VBAT, ground, and 5-volt, which are the same markings in the back of your camera. So I'm trying to make this as easy as possible. I actually tried to have flex boards that had the connectors on them already, so you could literally just get them in your kit, plug them in, and be good to go, no soldering required. But those didn't pan out because the connectors don't exist, and the company that was making the connectors for me just scammed me instead. So yeah, these ones, I push them through. So tiny. All right. Push them through, fold them over a little bit so they don't just pop them back out. All right, once they're through, I fold them so their leads face that way towards the top. And the same thing. Just a little bit of solder on them. Holds them in place. And these silicone wires are a little bit more flexible, so you can kind of bring them up a little bit. And you got those ones in. Alright, now I'm going to stick the ground wire. I'm going to clip that one a little shorter. And you don't want to like get this harness too twisted up, else it can be kind of a pain. So I'm going to pass this positive under everything. Try and unfuck whatever I got going on. Alright, I'll do the positive next actually. So I'll just pass the positive in there. And this one I'm going to fold it off the edge, so it's not going to short with any of the other ones. Just like that. And very gently clip. And then the negative, I'm going to kind of untwist the connector a little bit. It doesn't make too much of a difference. This is plenty of wire. But you want to be able to separate the two halves and get your fingers in there still. So I just leave a little bit of wire extra. It's easiest to do it on the cam side. Alright, so we got our negative in there. Pop back up. Got a negative in there. I'm getting a little short in here, so I'm just going to clip that up. It's very hot to hold on to it and do the ground. I'll bridge the connection, so I'm just trying to remove a little bit of solder. Alright. I think those are unbridged now. Just gonna inspect them. Right. So they're unbridged now. Should be good to go. All the connections are in there decently. And I also should note, I always put a little glue right here on that coil just to keep that there so that these pins aren't what's holding the boards together. I want the glue to be holding those together. Alright, so we're going to do our folds. So I fold it to the board. I fold it like this, so the gold contacts are on top. And then I fold right behind the gold contacts. And you don't have to be super precise about it, but just fold it kind of like that. And then fold here as well to make this kind of shape. And what do you think about this? This isn't supposed to be 90, it just is a fold right there. And then you're going to bring your cam connector over here. You're going to bring your display connector across. And I'm going to put a little glue to hold these wires here like this. And what I actually like to do is I save all these drippings from my hot glue gun, and I'll just like put them on here. I just hit them with a little hot air. That way I can kind of more precisely place the hot glue. Because what I just don't want to happen is the wires get tugged on and rip it. Yeah, just a little bit of hot glue on there, and it's good to go. And I'm going to heat this glue up here because it's kind of preventing the fold. It's because it's a little oversplash, so I'm just going to heat it up. And you kind of want it to make a little sandwich like this. Alright, so your display is going to get glued right there. This gets glued to the top of the tube. So this is the MX-69 like version 2. It's got a little socket up here, I guess you can call it, to accept the flex board versus the flat area on the old tubes. I don't have one on hand, I ran out of them. But basically, we're going to do that same hot glue trick. We heat this up. Well, let's install our display first, actually. So you'll take your display, you'll feed just the display and a small amount of ribbon through, enough to fold it over, and you're going to tuck and fold so most of the ribbon is inside the tube itself. And your board has a spot that it sits in. Let me see if I got any screws. I was running really low on the screws, so I'll start this little kit that I got. There's the biggest ones in here. Might be too small. If you tore apart an MX-69, you're going to use the screws out of, or if you tore apart a V760, you're going to use the screws out of that. So there should be 2 screws that hold your display in that unit, and then 2 that clamp it together, and that's what you're going to use is all 4 of those screws. So these screws are not going to work. Too small. Let me see what else I got. Those are not going to work. These are probably too long. But there's some of these Torx M2 screws. See the headphone? Alright, we'll see if these work. These might be way too long as well. Throw also not pointed. Yeah, those aren't gonna work too long. All right. Alright, so I'm out of screws. So what we're gonna have to do instead is glue it in, which won't affect it at all. It's just we'll have to heat it up to remove things if we need to, versus unscrewing. So I'm gonna plug my hot glue gun in and get it going, but that's gonna take a long time. So what I'm gonna do instead is we can go ahead and function test it. So take your plug, your driver board, plug it in, make sure nothing's shorting out. Take our cam, and I'm leaving the lens on for now, but it really doesn't matter. Take your cam, the cam plug in is really tight, but it should snap in. And I'm gonna take this out of here and lay it out. And I'm gonna grab this in the helping hands, making sure not to pinch any connections. So I don't know if you guys can see the cam, but I can see the cam, or the display. So I'm looking at my power supply, set it to 3.5 volts, and there's one pad marked 3.3 and one marked ground. So you're gonna touch to that, drawing power, and you probably can't tell, but we're fired up. So good to go there. I think it was power cycling, probably because I don't know. It's not liking going under 3.5 volt input. It wants to be closer to 4 volt input. So when I run these, I use them off the CR123 battery pack at a minimum. The run off 18650 is great, but the CR123s work as well. I'm gonna just show it. Alright, so next we're gonna unplug the camera, and don't pull it by the wires, you'll just rip them out. You wanna try and catch it by the plug, or use a tool to pry between the connector and the plug itself. Like I said, these fuckers are in there, so. Once you do it a few times, then they start wearing out and they start coming out easier. But initially, they're a bitch. I'm trying to pull on one side and then pull on the other until it comes out. There we go. Little Zara just came up to see. Hello. What's up, Zara? Alright. This screwdriver did not work for those ones. Alright, so I'm removing the screws on the back of the camera. Don't lose them, you'll need them. So they're a Phillips head, small one, smaller than the screws used in the V760. So remove that, and you can throw the lens away, you can keep the lens, whatever you want. Don't worry too much about like scratching this. You want it clean, obviously, but it's tempered glass on top of the sensor, so you're not going to scratch it. Where is that piece? So this is your cam side, and it has a notch on one side on the top, and you'll want the connector to be on the top. That's the top of it, and you'll see this cutout in the back for the ribbon cable so it doesn't get cut when you clamp it together. But you're gonna put your camera in there, and it should kind of like be in a spot. You'll be like, all right, that's it. Like it'll feel proper in there, and you'll see the holes through it, and then you're just gonna screw it in. And apparently there's like, some guys are saying they figured out a way to like adjust the flatness of the camera based off the screws, how much they poke through, which is true. So if you get like once you get it all together and like half your image is blurred for whatever reason, like it's like kind of like one side of the image is out of focus while the other's in focus, it's probably these screws, because you got to get them in there kind of level, or else it'll tilt your camera and have you out of focus and in focus in different parts of the frame. So I just run them through till I can start to see the screw. Then you get the screws even with their poke through. They should both poke through just a tiny amount. It's probably impossible to see it on the camera, but yeah, you want to get them tight, but you want them to be even tight, or even tightness, and even poke, and that ensures that the camera stays flush and flat when it comes through. Little kitty walking around. And then I take the sticker and I'll put the sticker back because you don't want to short anything out. So yeah, and you can put your cam on the front side too, but the problem is when the digital lens is in focus, it's pretty far out, and you don't have the rings locked in. You don't have much further to go before it actually is completely out of the threads. So I like to keep it on the inside of the tube, and I've modified the tubes now so they're not crushing anything inside when you close them up. I just basically extended the tube's length a little bit, so now when compared to an actual intensifier tube, it's about 5 millimeters longer, but that's still enough to catch threads on the retainer to lock everything in. Let's see. Hot glue gun. It's got a grip on it. Might be warm now. Alright. So when I'm starting to glue things in, I like to start with this display. So I just bring it through just a little bit, and everything else hangs loose. Not hot enough yet. This is a really special kind of hot glue. It's actually like $5 per stick. Doesn't feed through the gun the best. There we go. And it's really high temp stuff. So the gun's got to be absolutely searing to push this glue through. But it's like a resin once it dries. And then just kind of don't get on your fingers because it burns. If you get a little on the screen, it's fine, you can wipe it off. But just put it in the pocket, press your screen in, scrape up any extra, and I'll probably clean that off with a lens wipe. But just hold down on that until it dries because you want that screen to stay flush as well. I'm gonna wipe that screen real quick. Alright, screen is mostly clean. I'll lens wipe it later to get the rest of it off. But then, like I said, we're going to fold that cable in. And there's a spot where the board kind of like really just feels like it should be there, and that's where you want to have it. And I'm just going to put the nozzle to the hole and put a little glue in there. And that'll keep everything seated, because that glue will run through the board and into the holes, and then be seated properly. We'll hold this till it's good to go. Alright, and then what I like to do after you function test it, obviously, after you've ensured that it does power up with your solder connections, I'll lay some glue on the board itself, just like that. And this is to prevent shorts. And I'm going to fold this over and get my contacts kind of where they need to be, hold those in place with my finger. I'm going to press all this other crap in here into the board. Not too hard that I'm going to short anything out, like pressing any contacts through the glue, but enough so everything gets seated in the glue. And this is like a pre-potting, I guess. That's what I would call that. And that just ensures that when things start moving around, nothing's going to touch anything on the board and short anything out. And there's going to be a revision to these flex boards at some point to make things more streamlined, but those are a ways out. Basically, the plan is going to be you'll have your contacts up here, and they're actually going to kind of like slot in, so it's not like just glued down. There's going to be ribbons on either end, and it's going to fold and slot into the tube, so it's all held together. And then it's just going to have one ribbon that comes down that'll have your boost converter on it. Then you'll have your, it won't have that fold underneath that I thought was necessary, but it's really not. Because the point was to have the boost converter over on the side, but it just doesn't really do that too well, so end up sticking where it's at. Alright, so those are in place pretty good, and now I'm going to just kind of fold the ribbon up a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of, just a tiny amount. You barely need any here at all, but just a little bit of glue. Oh, you need more than that. Okay. Alright. Yeah, you just need a barely any. And you're going to position your flex board as close to that edge as possible. And you're going to press it down. It's not too hot, but you just press it and smooth it out. And try not to wipe any glue over top of the board. Wipe it out to the side. And you squeeze out. And that should be a pretty solid connection. And then the board the flex board dips down underneath. So when you install this part, it doesn't crush it and overlap. And got a little glue on here. Cut that off my finger. Alright. So now, good to go ahead and screw these together. Or not screw them together, connect them together. Alright, so they're connected up. And what I like to do is push this connector through the front. And it's just barely tight, so just push something behind it, something blunt to shove it through. And then what I'll do here is I'll twist this until I have my top on top, and I'm pretty much out of room to twist. I might have to flex some things. And the tubes kind of slot together. You don't really, you can't like shimmy them. You have to really get them in place. All right. I think we need to get things up in there more than it was. So I'm gonna take my hot air gun. I'm just gonna melt all this glue that's in here. I'm gonna really try and press the board up inside. Give us as much room as I can. Obviously I don't want to heat up so much solder components start coming off. But I just want to get that board up in there. It's already solidified. Pressed everything a little further up in there. Just kind of get it inside that flat half. And we'll see if we can't get these wires to move around in the housing a little bit, give us some more room. Alright. And I've noticed that I can only get it about to right here when I tighten with the screws, and it starts to bow out. So I get it to where it's not bowing, and then I just screw it to that point. And I don't screw it any further than that. When I put it into the housing and I press it down, it'll actually press the tube more, but it'll keep it not bowed. So now I gotta figure out how to screw these together without screws. So let's see if these ones are small enough. Probably not. They're big enough? Nope, they're too small. These may work. I want to make some changes to the way the MX-69 actually assembles as well, and because there's different sensors now that people are experimenting with, and I want to be able to make everything compatible with the new sensors. So like I'm gonna make the tube kind of just a cup, and then the sensors are gonna be on a plate that gets screwed on, so that way everything is in there and you know it's sitting where it should be, and then you screw your tube on after, or you screw your sensor on after, kind of like how it is but without these edges, so everything will be like in a cup essentially. And hopefully the screws aren't bottoming out. And they bottom out. Alright, well, the screws are too long, which is annoying. And they actually don't have a point, so they can't drill themselves any further. That one actually did a little bit. Alright. So that screw's not drilling itself any deeper. Your V760 screws aren't going to have that problem. They're the perfect length and size for these holes. Right, that's going to be good for now. And then I've already built the housing. So here's my housing. It's already got one digital tube inside of it. And what I'm going to do is pull this cable through all the way as much as it can. And I'm going to line up those contacts on the top with the springs inside the housing. And I'm going to feed my tube in. And you want to make sure your cable doesn't get caught up in there. And we're going to program the tube next. And when I say program, I mean just optimize the settings so you get the most performance out of it. Alright, so with that extra length, you're only going to catch a couple threads in here. But I'm going to press that and grab a tube retainer. I got somewhere around here. One of the old PET G ones from the prototypes. And just press down as you twist that ring on, and that should clamp a little bit. It's not really catching the threads, but alright. So now we got some threads on it, and that tube is retained in there. We got our cable. Oh, sick. PUBG's probably not gonna work. I don't see MDF ones. Panos. There we go. There's an MDF retainer. There we go. The FDM print just doesn't have strong enough threads on the bottom. When it catches that just barely a little bit, instead of grabbing and pulling in, it's just skipping off. Alright, so now we got that in there. And what I like to do is test one tube in the housing at a time before I like power the housing up. So I'm going to pull this tube out, which I've already confirmed it works in the housing. And now I'm just going to set this here. And I'm going to take my multimeter. Sorry, I can't see the multimeter. I'll move it into view. And I'm going to put it on continuity. And I'm just going to run continuity across these terminals up here, and this is checking continuity of the other tube. And what you want to see is 0.321 on a continuity test. I don't know what kind of ohms that leads to. I think that's just 0.321 ohms. But you want 0.3, 0.35, anything over 0.4 or in the 0.5 area. 0.4 is hit or miss, but if it's in 0.5, you have a short somewhere, and you may have a bad display driver board, so you want to check that. And then, like, it just may not work if your resistance is too high. And I got my battery pack. It's on my helmet, obviously. And I'm just gonna plug in the housing. And light's real bright, but it's powering up. We're not getting an image, obviously, because there's no lens on it. But we can fix that. Oh, we can't. Because that cable's right there. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to screw an eyepiece on here. And there's just enough cable. Should be just enough. What are you doing, kitty? To get it over the edge. And plug in your OSD board. Kitty's chewing on cardboard. sure what direction this goes in there. I can't really see where the pins are. Yeah, it's to squeeze. You should only have just enough to plug it in. You can do this out of the housing. It's just hard to see your tube face, and you risk shortening it if you're doing it with like leads and stuff. All right. So we have our OSD plugged in. And let me actually just take my battery pack off. Alright, so tube is powered up. So I can adjust the diopter for the phone a little bit better. And this is weird because I'm looking through my phone at the tube. I'm going to adjust things to make this more comfortable for me. And I can't see shit. Alright, step one is go to System. And find NTSC. Press the side button to switch that to PAL. And then I always go to Pilot. And I changed this to PVS69, but I cannot do it looking at it through my phone because I just cannot read the letters. So I'm going to look through it real quick and just change them. But something shortened on the keypad. PVS6E, no, 6, 9, there you go. And then, sorry about that, guys. Coming back on the camera, we have our timer. That just tells you how long it's been running. I don't know, it's just extra shit on the screen, but it's not a big deal. Voltage, I like to leave that one on. And then I go to return, and then you go to exposure, and this is a personal preference, but I like to set it to manual. And once you set it to manual, you click on it and set it to 1 to 50. See, the difference is with NTSC, it's only 1 to 60 versus 1 to 50, and it's a huge difference actually between 1 and 50, 1 and 60. I don't mess with any of these other settings really. And then I go to brightness. Let me look through it again. Not brightness, sorry. Still in exposure. Oh, what the heck? They like removed settings. No, image. And I go to gamma. And see, we're in the gamma setting right now. As it focuses. And it just kind of changes the brightness of the image. So if you turn gamma all the way up, it's going to be brighter to look at, but it's going to increase the amount of detail. So I like to leave it at its brightest setting. And there's mirror and flip, don't fuck with those. And that's pretty much the only things I change. I know there's other people that change more, but then you go to exit, and then see it says previous 69 at the bottom. And you always want to power cycle it to be sure those changes saved. Come on, focus. All right, it still says previous 69, so yep, the change is saved. All right, so we'll move it back over here. I'll power it off, unplug it, and then pull my cable out. And I'm going to take some tweezers. I'm going to turn the light back on. Take some tweezers, and I'm going to poke this wire in as much as I can. And I'm not going to be able to shove the actual connector back through. That's fine as long as it's out of the way, because the focus of the lens, unless you're focusing at like fucking 6,000 meters, you just want to, the lens won't be hitting the connector. So, like I said, just shove that in as much as you can. I'll move the tube to do that actually. That's probably a lot easier. These ones, and I'll just push that in. And I always use this top left hole because there's not really anything behind it. You know, so it's just easy to get a really good bite and stick everything in there. I don't like to put the connector through just because then I gotta take the tube back apart if I want to reprogram something. Or if something doesn't save or resets for whatever reason. Yeah, just get all that through as much as you can. Just so that connector doesn't flop around in there and get snagged or something. Yeah. Just a little bit so the connector can kind of fold over when your tube is inserted and you're not going to mess anything up. So I'm going to drop that tube back in, line my contacts up. The reason I say to line the contacts up and not the actual indicator pin on the tube is because you might have messed up your flex board placement and it might just be slightly off, so you want to make sure you get it on there perfect. And where's another tube? I don't remember where I set it. Oh, there's two right here. Alright, here's a tube. I believe this one's unprogrammed, so I still have to program it, but line it up, press it in, and clamp it down with the connector. It's an eyepiece. Obviously, when you're doing your final assembly, you're gonna make sure everything's very clean in there. You're gonna dust it. You're gonna use probably like it's good to use maybe some like not electrical tape, but like blue painter's tape, and just like dab it in there to get any dust, any debris out. Blow in it a little bit, but don't blow too much because you might blow moisture in. Let's see, here's another digital lens. And where's the other eyepiece? Another eyepiece up here. And that's basically all you got to do for the tube assembly part. Obviously the housing is a totally different ball game. It's not super hard. See, I got a couple bridges pre-soldered here for the 1.2s, which is what I'm producing currently. We're not done with our initial testing yet because we still might have shorted something, you know, putting it together. So I like to be extra careful. And I'll take my multimeter out again, still have it on continuity. And I'm using a Fisher port on here, which has 4 pins, and those bottom 2 are ground, and the top 2 are positive. So I just jam it into one pin, I jam it into an adjacent one, and power cycle it. And I don't know if you can see the multimeter, 0.316, which is good. We're at the proper resistance level for the tubes. And where'd my battery pack go? Here's the battery pack. And what's awesome about digital night vision is I can turn it on with this light right here. So we got one powering. This one is not powering. This tube was giving me some trouble though, because I think I messed up the placement of the board itself. Oh yeah, it's not even tight. The tube wants to like pop back out, and that board is just not far enough back to catch connection. So run an MJF one on there and get as tight as I can. The other side's powering up, but not this side. So, well, we have one side powered up, not the other side yet. So this is where the build gets really annoying for me, because it turns into a lot of testing and double checking and ensuring things are right. And when I'm pushing the tubes out, I actually push them out with the lens, because the lens will contact the tube a little bit. And that gets my initial push out of there. What the fuck? I have one black screw, which I know doesn't work, and one silver screw. I don't know what I was doing with that tube. Alright, I'm gonna run one of these Torx ones in there, and I'll bench test the tube as well, so I know it's not a tube issue. Where's my multimeter? So always before applying a voltage when I'm testing, I will continuity check them. And also with your continuity check, you want to make sure your polarity stays correct, because it does push a small voltage. So we're running 0.321, it's good. So this tube will probably power up. We're running 3.5 volts, drawing 0.5 amps. Cam is not powering up on this 3.5 volts. We'll step it up to 4. And cam powers up. Everything's running properly. So it's probably just an issue with my flex board placement on this tube specifically. It's just not quite where it needs to be. And that one, ran out of the proper screws. Gotta have the screws. That's not going in any further. So I'm just going to ensure my contacts in the housing are correct. Line the tube up. There we go. There's a little snap there. I wonder if it was not properly all the way in before. Alright. Now we'll run that same continuity check for powering up the housing, just to be 100% certain we're not shorting, because I've ruined a lot of fucking tubes and wasted a lot of money on stupid shorting. And it's just simple problems that that was because I accidentally touched it on the one side. So we're reading 170 ohms, which I actually recently learned resistor math, not entirely, but a lot of it. And I thought if you have two resistors in a circuit in parallel, or two resistances, you're going to just power the smaller resistor, right? The path of least resistance. But that's not true. You gotta think of it as like a hose, or a couple hoses, right? You might have one hose that's bigger, has less resistance to it, and you have another hose that's tighter and smaller and has more resistance to it. But your end resistance is always going to be less than if you were using either hose, because you're adding more area for electricity to flow, essentially. It blew my mind because I was like, wow, I never thought of it that way. All right. That was the issue. It just wasn't seated in there all the way. So we have one tube on, another tube on. Focus is obviously just fucking what it is right now. But let's see if I can hit a close focus. See, the programmed one is so much brighter than the unprogrammed one. And that's your real difference at nighttime. Let me flick the lights off in the room quick. So the room is pretty much completely dark now. And you can see my table. There's like keyboard lights on over there or whatever, but is what it is. But you can see the table a little bit. Not too big of a difference with these. Probably because it reduced the shutter to 1 to 60. And 1 to 60 is all it really needs to see in this level of darkness. But yeah, that's pretty much the MX-69 build. And how to do it with the new boards. I want to put out a video because those boards are shipping out. And I want to not have to answer people's questions. I want to just do a video on it. That's pretty much all I got. Not Siri. Alright. Just looking through some of the comments. Analog. I've been doing them fairly cheap actually. This is an analog housing I built for someone. Still got to ship to him. It's got the NVT tubes in it. It's a dust cover that I'm trying to recreate that I found. But I forget what he paid for those. Like a little over $4,000 for 69s built with NVT tubes and the Alexi lenses. Thermal version, still on hold. It's really just been, I haven't been able to commit the money to a thermal yet to actually make it work. I've got a bunch of different sensors that I've been meaning to put in and try different sensors out as well, but I just haven't been able to get those. Oh, you casted some? That's pretty cool. So I do plan to offer built MX-69s, but they are a fucking pain to assemble. So once I really get it hammered out and I get like a really solid, like I can build these in 5 minutes kind of design, then I'll be able to offer them. Because at the end of the day, I can't just like sell them for cost when it takes me like an hour to build one. You know what I mean? Like, what's this live stream at? A little over an hour. When it takes me an hour to build and test one, I can't, you know, it's a lot of time to spend on making those. So I just really don't want to do that until I can get them to where I can build an entire MX-69 in 15 minutes. Build it, test it, say it's good to go. I also don't want to stand behind the, I know it's shitty of me to say, but these boards, components literally just fall off of these boards, and so it's kind of like a bad stance for me to like be like, oh yeah, I can't offer a warranty on these boards because they just break sometimes, or sometimes they're just no good. I literally had one. I assembled MX-69 the other day, and it's giving me like cartoon images for whatever reason when I look through it. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Any more questions, let me know real quickly. All right, that's it. Good night.